Hello, everyone. One of our common ways of talking about what I call wholeness is the metaphor of being on track. Not a bad way of describing what it's like to be in sync with your soul, your deep nature. Being in sync with your soul indeed feels sometimes like gliding smoothly, maybe even moving rapidly, perhaps very rapidly, like a high speed train. All is moving along quite well until it's not. Nearly everything can cause a derailment, a fault in the track, some foreign object impeding the smooth ride, a crisis in the body of the engineer, a mechanical failure or an electrical mishap, the malfunction of a tiny chip. The truth is, we don't have a lot of control over what can cause a derailment, except in that narrow band of consciousness that might house some self destructive pattern. Don't forget that most of our lives, from the workings of our bodies to the intricacies of our minds, we are unconscious of. What we do have some say so about is what we do when suddenly we find ourselves derailed. What do we do when tragedy strikes? How do we handle it when suddenly we are robbed of the very thing or person or condition we've placed our hopes in? A woman whom I knew fairly well called me one morning in tears. Through sobs, she told me that she just received news that her favorite nephew had been killed. He was in the U.S. Army, and an accident had happened on the base where he was stationed, and in seconds, he was dead. As she gained enough composure to talk coherently, she poured out her feelings. I feel as though I've been robbed of my future, she said. She and her partner had no children of their own. That nephew was the person they'd counted on being their mainstay as they moved through middle age and into their later years. And she was angry. In Dylan Thomas's words, raging at the dying of the light that had illumined her world. Hers was no exceptional story. It's the clarity of her thoughts and the power of her words that makes the incident stick in my mind. It's a classic example of how we can't put Humpty Dumpty together again, smashed, beyond repair, all over everywhere, and from all appearances, an irredeemable mess. Few of us have lived very long before we discovered what it's like to be derailed. My mother frequently referred to her own mother's death when she was 11 years old. A child with no experience of my own, I just took it as a fact. But once when I was around 11, Mama was in great stress one morning over a combination of things, angry, raging. And to make matters worse, my brother and I had been arguing and fighting. It was the second Sunday of May that year, Mother's Day. In her rage, she let loose a shaming comment. Maybe next year, by God, you won't have a mother. Wow, that was a horrible thing to say, but on some level, I knew what she was referring to. Down deep underneath all the stuff she was angry about, including the squabbling of her two boys, lay the fear, sorrow, tears, and probably unspoken anger at being left with no mother when she was just at the age when she needed a mother most. I don't know how she felt or whether she felt any of that. What I know is the chilling effect of her words on me. The thought of not having her as the ballast in a family already rocked by addiction was beyond scary. No matter who we are, sooner or later we're going to encounter stoppers, derailments of our best laid plans and things that pull us off course. So, how do we deal with those things? First, and this is very crucial for young people, understand that nothing is ever going to work perfectly. Now, you don't get through junior high, let alone high school, without learning that. Still, it's important to realize that no matter how well you plan, something that you can't foresee is going to happen. The old scout motto, be prepared, is good advice. Have a plan B and maybe a plan C whenever you have plan A. Although you might never need them, you'll have them if you do. Realize that you can be doing everything right, and sometimes tragedies will happen. Decades ago, a relative of mine was driving when she was hit head on by a car driven by a drunk driver. She and her very young son were seriously injured. The child sustained serious brain damage as a result. A healthy, bright, promising little boy lived the rest of his life and is still living it, seriously physically limited. Relatives offered support, childcare, financial assistance, and not everyone is so fortunate. That's an extreme example of a serious interruption, not just of plans, but of life. I myself live in a space that neither fears nor expects that kind of tragedy. In my experience, most of the things we worry about or dread never happen. The energy we spend agonizing over what ifs is energy that's lost to us, expended for no good. But what I learned from that tragic example is how people pick up the pieces and go on with their lives. And they did. One of the best books I've ever read is Reynolds Price's A Whole New Life. Price, a well-known author of dozens of books, was the James B. Duke Professor of English at Duke University. In midlife, he was stricken with cancer in the form of an elongated tumor embedded in his spinal cord. Although surgery and radiation removed the tumor, Price, for the remainder of his life, was a paraplegic, requiring a wheelchair. Incessant pain never abated. Yet he was to become an even more prolific writer and wrote, "I'd have to say that despite an enjoyable 50-year start, these recent years since full catastrophe have gone still better. They brought more in and sent more out, more love and care, more knowledge and patience, more work and less time." The thing I remember most clearly from A Whole New Life is Price's counsel that when something like cancer or other illness deals a lethal blow to your body as you know it, don't imagine that you'll get your body back. You won't. If you're lucky, you'll be able to get a whole new life. That's the reason for the title of the book. Significantly different from the old life you've known. There are other questions about derailments and derangements, like what about anger? Anger, when your plans are upended, leaving your life seriously interrupted, is a perfectly natural and understandable response. Express it. Don't expect others to understand, because they won't. They might understand how they feel or felt when derailments happen, but they won't be able to understand exactly how you feel. And since a great many people are anger averse, they'll want to talk you down and away from being angry, saying things like crying won't help, don't waste time being angry, or the recently popular just get over it. Frankly, I feel my blood beginning to boil when I just think about such responses as those. They're not helpful. But your job is not to correct other people, but to manage your own anger, including the anger you might have at the way people around you are responding to your anger. I don't know of any surefire formula, only that if you're angry, choose carefully how you express it, but by all means, find a way to express it. Unexpressed anger, anger turned inward, is a sure invitation to depression, and that positively won't help. If you have a spiritual practice, like meditation or some other form of prayer, the time of derailment is cut out for a chance to use it. That's a good reason to develop a dependable practice, because it's not the kind of thing you can cram into an emergency kit for the rare times you are knocked off your feet. An old dependable mantra is, "This too shall pass." It's said to come from a tale of the Persian Sufi tradition, a story about a king, like the Old Testament Solomon or somebody, who wanted something he could use to steady himself in times of prosperity and in times of adversity. His sages gave him a signet ring, inscribed with the motto, "This too shall pass." The poet Edward Fitzgerald made it popular in the 19th century with his work Solomon's Seal, and Jewish folklore contains a version of the same story in which the monarch is Solomon. A very wise friend of mine once told me when I was in a period of my life that was seriously derailed, stay in motion. It's easier for a spirit to guide you when you aren't inert but moving. Good advice. He didn't mean to just move frenetically just to keep in motion perpetually, but to move, just move. It's helpful to start, it's not helpful, rather, to start comparing yourself to others. I don't recommend asking, well, why did this happen to me? Or look how many other people have it worse. Neither is necessarily a bad thing to say. Sometimes a bit of soul searching to pinpoint what we might have done to bring on the derailment while we've contributed to our own mess might be appropriate and helpful. And likewise, it's not likely that whatever your derailment, challenge, or calamity is, it's the absolute worst thing that could happen or ever did happen. If you choose to go down either of those paths, I suggest you don't go too fast or too far. To me, the more effective approach is to ask, what might I learn from this? That question might not have a quick answer, but that doesn't mean it isn't worth asking. Everything in life is a potential learning experience. It's smart to be thinking about what the learning might be that life is offering you. And when enough distance has passed, and you'll know when, the question might morph into, what have I learned from this? That's how Reynolds Price came to write his book, A Whole New Life. We've taken a good look now at what and how we might respond when life goes awry, as it most assuredly will at some point. And already you know that there's not some secret fix that can lead you out of trouble painlessly. So now I want to reframe the derailment phenomenon, placing it in a larger context. Derailments might seem to come out of the blue, but in fact, they are predictable. Not in their specific dimensions and manifestations, but because they are a part of the way the universe functions. Human life and experience aren't exceptions to that. If you take any incident from your life, from the major events to the most minor slice of experience, you'll see that each one of those incidents, slices of life, whether it's a decade, a year, a season, a few days, or hours, or minutes, or even seconds, carries at least 4 dynamics. The first one is what we can call the ideal. And by ideal, I mean the promise, the potential, the possibility. In short, what could happen that would be perfect? Indeed, a few things seem to be like that, or at least they start off that way. Along with the ideal is what we might think of as its evil twin. Not really evil, but just the opposite of the perfect. A day begins with bright sunshine, cloudless skies, moderate temperature, and has all the appearances of being problem-free. I think you'll admit that very few days that start that way end up that way. Weather systems can be brewing that we aren't aware of, leading to a surprise thunderstorm, perhaps even a flash flood. Or the picnic that was supposed to be perfect included a slip on a slope, a banged up knee or elbow, a hidden nest of fire ants, a bout with a poisonous insect or a snake, or perhaps a serious accident. Something happens that mars the ideal. It's always potentially there. A third thing that's wrapped up in any incident is the potential that the truth is going to be revealed in whatever happens. Sometimes that truth will come as a relief, sometimes as a challenge, sometimes as a shock. But we'll discover things like how vulnerable we are, how quickly things can go wrong, how dangers lurk in unexpected places. It will all depend on what happens when what could go wrong indeed has gone wrong. The truth revealed can stretch out over a long, long time. It might continue to become clearer after days, weeks, years have passed. We might or might not continue to be receptive to what that day or incident had to teach us. But the dynamic is always there. We always have the possibility of growing or not, of rising to the occasion, or shrinking from it, of learning or not. And the fourth thing that's always present in whatever might come out of the experience, it's always the possibility of resolution, always hope, always a possibility of change, renewal, redemption, always a promise that something better can arise. Now, true, it's possible to glibly assume that all the possibilities are good, and sometimes they're not. Things can go from bad to worse. Sometimes a regime will fall, and instead of ushering in an era of freedom and prosperity, it will be followed by something as bad or worse than the last regime, maybe more awful. This is when it's possible, and I'd have to say helpful, to have a long view of what might come. The truth is, we often don't know because we can't know. When the players are human beings, there are so many variables that are impossible to predict or track. Now, maybe AI will figure out a way to change all that, but I doubt it. And even if everything does become predictable, I'm not sure that the result is guaranteed to be all that nifty. Sticking with our paradigm, however, we can at least begin to imagine what a desirable outcome might be from whatever the ideal was that deteriorated. Sometimes it's reflecting on it that will tell us that. Whatever truth was that situation presented to you, to ponder, to see, and to respond to. Okay, so take for this situation, for example, say a family member is suddenly ill, and she is in the prime of life, maybe just having turned 50, and it turns out that she had an undiagnosed heart condition that was congenital. No one knew until she had a massive heart attack and almost died. And at first, the situation was touch and go, but open heart surgery is remarkably successful, and she begins to recover nicely. Soon she's released from the hospital, goes home to complete her recuperation, comes back in a few months, has a checkup, a few more, is given a clean bill of health. And then one morning she gets into a car, not the first time, but one of the first times that she's driven by herself. She backs out of her driveway, heads down the street, and within a block, a delivery truck runs a stop sign and T-bones her. And instantly she is killed. Now that's awful. After all the angst of sickness, surgery, and recovery, the devastating death was about the last thing that anyone was prepared for. You can see how the first three properties of this extended incident played out. The ideal, the woman was in perfect health. What went wrong, the unknown and undiagnosed condition that threatened her life. Third, the truth revealed was when the curtain was drawn back and the fragility of life could be seen. The amazing potential of medical science was in play, the sustaining love and support of family and friends, and so on. The hope that she would fully recover, live her full life for many years, and die a natural death. Now, you also see how the accident that killed her was itself a part of another protracted incident. The day that was to have included a problem-free drive turned out to be a tragic one. Life doesn't stop, and so incidents don't stop. Life is a parade of moments, each one of which is always carrying a promise, a failure, a revelation, and a great big question mark. That last thing, the question mark, is always the mystery. What shall we do? What can or will happen? How will people handle the outcome, whatever it is? At the end of the day, the choice is yours. Whether your response is to something in your own life or to something that happens around you that you're tangential to, you might respond in hope or you might respond with despair. Many times it's likely to be some of both. Sometimes it's just not possible to make the proverbial lemonade out of the lemons we've been dealt. We still have the choice, however. Well, are you going to paint a still life of lemons on a table? Are you going to say, well, I can't paint, and instead grab a lemon or two, suck on them, and complain about it? How about the possibility, especially when the way forward isn't so obvious, that we take something like a star to use a phrase from Robert Frost, something like a star to stay our minds on. How about choosing something that we can touch, like that signet ring in the story, to remind ourselves of an abiding truth outlasting all the vicissitudes of experience, the ups and downs of a clamorous world? What if we were able to say to all that happens, this too shall pass? Not resigning in hopelessness, but saying yes to whatever lessons the universe is dishing out to us so that we can learn, grow, and be grateful for deeper, richer lives that are the best life has to offer. Derailments. We'll have them, and I hope that this helps you deal with how you do and how you might handle the derailments when they come. I appreciate your being here and listening to this podcast. It is really meaningful to me to hear from you, and I hope that you will contact me if you'd like to suggest topics or to raise questions or to disagree or to point out something that I've missed. And that can really be not only helpful, but very interesting and very instructive. You can always reach me, Frank G. Dunn at gmail.com or frank at thesoulinU.com. Either one will get to me. And if you'd like to have put you on the list of people who that are notified when I do a podcast, which is generally about every 2 weeks, but whenever they're being released, I'll be glad to do that. I can also be found on Substack, in which space on my Substack I post releases of both a blog and a podcast. The blog is called Angels and Principalities, angelsandprincipalities.com. You'll see it at the end of this if you're looking at the video version of it. Angelsandprincipalities.com is a place where I and other people like you have conversations about where faith, whatever shape it takes in our experience, intersects with politics, whatever we do about political situations. And we're in a very, very dicey time right now, no matter where you are in the world. So if you'd like to be a part of that, please check it out, angelsandprincipalities.com. Thank you again for listening, and I hope to see you again for another episode of Your Story.